Hello and welcome back to Bicycle Legs, and something a little bit different this week. I've got a regular guest on the channel, Peter Kerr. Peter, always a pleasure to have you on the channel.
Good to be here.
And today we're going to be doing something that I'm tentatively calling friendly arguments, because Peter and I, we sort of direct message each other a lot, and talking about shows and talking about music more generally and that sort of thing. And, Peter and I often don't always see eye to eye on certain albums. And rather than just keep it in our DMs, I thought it might be interesting to make a show out of it and would discuss one of those albums that we sort of have differing views on.
Yep.
And the album that we're talking about today is Synchronicity by The Police. And the interesting thing about this one, as we found out in our discussions, is that I found out when I was watching a Contrarians episode, one of the album cover shows that they do regularly, is that this is Peter's least favorite Police album. Whereas when I did my ranking on the Police, this was my number one. This was the absolute top of the table for me. So we thought it'd be interesting to have a bit of a discussion about it. We'll go through it track by track and that sort of thing. But Peter, yeah, I mean, obviously we see things quite differently here with the Police. And I'm just a little bit, as you were saying to me before we came on air, you don't hate this album by any stretch, do you?
No, I don't. And as we go deeper into the show, you'll see there are some songs that I think are quite extraordinary on this particular album. But I think that the Police catalog is very high quality. But if I had to rank the albums, this would be at the bottom of the pile. One question for you, Daniel.
Yeah.
What was your entry point to the Police?
It would have been when I was very young. It would have been, sort of the hits, sort of things like Walking on the Moon and the
Right.
do 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 da 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 and things like that.
So you've
This
been there from the start, like me.
from very
Yeah.
early on, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
this came out when I'm a little younger than you. This came out when I was 12 years old, I think.
Right. Yeah.
And, obviously this had the biggest hit that this band ever had in its career on it. But yeah, I mean, it's just an album I feel like they go outside what they've done on their other albums. And maybe that's why you don't rank it so high. Whereas, for me, I like the adventurousness of it. But
Yeah. I think there's certain elements to this album which put warning signals about what Sting's career was going to become. I'm not a big fan of Sting's solo career. I thought a lot of it was pretentious twaddle. And there are some songs on this album that are dangerously going down that path and do mar this album from being a stone cold classic. So to me,
yeah,
this is like the transition album. I look, Ghost in the Machine is my favorite Police album. That's where I think they're at their stone cold peak. It was adventurous. It was outside the box. They still had a little bit of commercial flair, but that album was just completely a wonderful album and very atmospheric. This one was way more commercial. It's very glossy. It's got some fantastic songs and one stone cold masterpiece. But as we go in and talk track by track, it's marred by some songs that are kind of average and a little bit ordinary, and in some cases quite risible.
yeah, fair enough. I
Wait
mean,
and see.
I obviously don't see it that way. So it'll be interesting to see as we go through track by track which ones you're sort of talking about here.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, let's get into it. It starts off with Synchronicity I.
Yeah. Maybe one more thing before
Yeah,
we
yeah,
start
sure.
is let's talk about the album cover.
It's a great
This
album
is
cover, isn't it?
this is an interesting sort of entry into the psyche of the band. So all those original album covers where you have the three and they're kind of, there's like a silhouette and there's different sort of shading and they look kind of like a band of brothers, even though in reality, folks, they hated each other's guts. You know, like on record, it was the most acrimonious band. It was like physical punch-ups, wasn't it, Daniel,
Well,
backstage?
particularly between Sting and Stuart Copeland, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is the album cover that shows them being like separate identities. So it's a little bit like the Beatles' White Album in a sense that they're not together, but they're on record together. So you've got the different sort of personalities. So you've got the Stuart, who's like the portrayed like an 18th or 19th century classical musician, a little bit of eccentric. And I love the reference to the, he's the timekeeper here. And then you've got Andy Summers on the phone. I imagine he's kind of the wheeler and dealer, the more sort of down to earth, keeping the business sort of going. And then this is the Sting, the deep thinker, reading classic literature. And this is, open to criticism of, him being a little bit pretentious.
Yeah.
And this is sort of the warning signal to me when I saw it, was like, oh, okay, what are we getting into? And that's sort of like a key to a lot of the dangerous excesses of Sting's solo career.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, you say that you Sting and his pretentiousness. And I mean, the whole idea of this album, a lot of the lyrics on it, the title Synchronicity, is getting into the works of Carl Jung and things like that, so sort of deep psychological stuff that we're talking about here.
Yeah, well, I think let's go into the songs and then we'll just pull it apart. And then, we can sort of like, there's a fine art between music being overtly pretentious and being on the right side of, not being so pretentious and wanky, so to speak. So
yeah,
let's go into it.
Well, yeah. So it starts off with, I think, a banger of an opening track, which is Synchronicity I.
Yeah, I don't have any issues with that. I think this is one of the stronger tracks. I've actually earmarked about 5. There's 5 songs on this album. This one got a lot of radio airplay and they lead it off. But if you look at the song list, all the singles are in the middle section. So it's sort of like what I would classify a filler is sort of wedged between Synchronicity I and basically track 6, which is Synchronicity II. And then you have that little run of all those power singles, and then sort of wraps up at the end, track 10. And if you've got the bonus album, track 11.
Yeah. I mean, this had a different sound for me for the Police, this song, because it's very keyboard based rather than, most of their stuff was very sort of basic guitar bass drums. They started messing around with keyboards on Ghost in the Machine. Most obviously all that beautiful piano on every little thing she does is magic. But this is really sort of, it's sort of like a sequencer, synthesizer, that riff through it, that and it absolutely, it propels the song, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It's very shiny and it takes a lot of shine off the drumming. I like the edgy drumming of Stuart Copeland. Sometimes he's a little bit behind the beat, sometimes he's ahead of the beat. But this one is just so mechanical, and it's very much the production of the day. This album, Dire Straits, Brothers in Arms, is sort of, you can't get much more of an album that sort of sums up the sophistication, the technology of 80s recording. I mean, it was, produced by the king of the gated reverb, wasn't it? Hugh Pagham. He was the one who invented that sort of sound off, the Phil Collins song "In the Air Tonight." And
well, absolutely. I mean, Hugh Padgham is the king of the gated reverb, but he doesn't really use that on this album. I mean, to me, even on this song, I feel like the drums still sound like Stuart Copeland, even though it is a very mechanical beat. And of course, the other thing that I think gives this song a sense of propulsion is the fact that it's in 6/4 time.
Yeah, but it's much more smoother.
3s and 2s at the same time.
Yeah, it's much more smoother. But I agree with you. I like this song. It's smooth, it's sophisticated, it's very much of the 80s, and it's a good start to the album. So I don't really have too many complaints with this particular song.
But then we start to get into some of the ones that you do, and starting with Walking in Your Footsteps.
Hate this song. Hate it. No, it's like, quote lyrics. Hey, Mr. Dinosaur, you really couldn't ask for more. You were God's favorite creature, but you didn't have a future. It's talking about the demise of the dinosaurs. This is just like Sesame Street, Bicycle Legs. It's terrible. Seriously. It's lightweight, really. And this is really setting the scene for some of Sting's new wave wankery. And I mean, the new age sort of material with the Dream of the Blue Turtles. Now, folks, if you thought Russians was bad, go back to this. I don't think people talk about this song so much because I think a lot of people are blinded on this album because it's got 5 really outstanding songs. But all the songs in between, there are some really risible songs. And this one, it's the pan flutes. I
Yeah.
hate the pan flutes.
Well,
I can't stand those synth tribal drums. And, Sting was right at the forefront, like David Byrne with this new age music. And it's a genre of music that I'm not a big fan of. And it was sort of like the sort of music you'd hear at dinner parties, those Wall Street stockbrokers with their little pinky finger having martinis and listening to Sting. And it's just, I can't stand it.
you
Terrible.
see, I'm going to disagree with you on this because I really like this song.
The
I
lyrics are
like the
basic though, mate.
yeah,
They're
the lyrics.
terrible.
Okay, I'm not a huge lyrics guy. I'm much more a music guy than a lyrics
Mm.
guy. Um, and I like the atmosphere that this music creates that in this song. It's kind of got an eeriness to it. Um, the combination of those pan flutes, as you say, and the tribal drumming, I think it just conjures up this sort of image in my head anyway of the, sort of walking back, 65 million years ago or whatever during the time of the
Well, I think
dinosaurs.
this is the sort of music and him and Trudy were doing their tantric sex routine in the middle of their flat. But here's another lyric. Here's another Bobby Dazzler. Hey, mighty Brontosaurus, don't you have a lesson for us? You thought your rule would always last. There were no lessons in your past. It's terrible. Rule of thumb: any songs about dinosaurs, avoid. Like that terrible song on that Peace of Mind album, Iron Maiden. What was it? When dinosaurs ruled the earth. I've forgotten that song. Quest for Fire. That's terrible.
Mm.
Walking the Dinosaur. What was that song? Oh, I forget it.
Yeah, then
Was not
walk the dine.
was.
Yeah,
Yeah.
was not was.
Anything that has dinosaur in it, avoid, folks.
No, unless it's They Might Be Giants. I Am a Paleontologist. That song rocks.
That's quirky.
Um, but I mean, that is on one of their kids' albums, though. So,
Yeah. Daniel,
But
I'll put it to you this way. If you were ranking from best to worst on this album, this would be near the bottom, wouldn't it, for you?
it would be in the bottom half, but I still really, really like it.
Is it the
Um,
music or so you just
it
forgive
is
the
the
lyrics?
music.
You forgive
The
the
lyric,
lyrics.
look, I don't think the lyrics are as risible as you think they are. I
Mm,
don't think they're brilliant either. I think
mm.
Sting has written better lyrics. I think there are worse lyrics on this album, and we'll get to that.
I
But
know which one you're going to talk about.
um, but yeah, I don't know. I like the sort of, as I say, I can almost sort of see the mist in this song when it's playing. I can see the mist in my head and the sort of carboniferous forests and, the dinosaurs walking through. I like it.
It's
To me,
okay.
it creates and then we get Oh My God. So I'm guessing you have a problem with the lyric on this one as
Yeah, look,
well,
you
too.
know, it's one of those Sting, oh, oh, every album he's got 2 or 3, oh, he's doing his AO routine. It's better. It's a filler track. I find on this particular song that Sting's putting a lot of energy into the vocal lines, but the band's kind of a little bit, seems a bit lackadaisical. They're just doing, I don't know, they seem to be a little bit more downbeat and a little bit behind. I get the feeling that he's enthusiastic about this track, but the rest of the band are just going through the motions. Um, yeah, what do you think? I think this is a filler track, but it's better than,
Um, Look,
walking.
you might be surprised to hear me say this, but it might be my least favorite track on the album. Um, I'm sure there's one track coming up that's going to be the least favorite for just about everybody else. But I don't know. I still like it. I mean, I love the sax on this song. I don't know
Mm,
which member of the band is playing it because on this album, the three of them play everything. There's no session musos on this at all.
yeah.
So I don't know who's playing the sax on this, whether it's Sting or whether it's Andy Summers, but um, it's nice. It's not the greatest song on the album, but I still like it in the context of the album, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like it bridges you between the track before and the track after.
Do you like
Um,
Sting when he does the Dior and he goes into that higher register? Is that,
Depends.
yeah?
Look, I'm not a big Sting solo fan either, with the exception of Dream of the Blue Turtles. I love that album. Um, I think it's very jazzy, and I think that's probably what you get a bit here too, is a bit of jazz with the sax and that sort of thing. Um, so I mean, on Dream of the Blue Turtles, you've got Branford Marsalis playing sax,
Hmm.
who's a genuine, he's an actual jazz player. He's not a rock player at all. But I don't know. As I say, it's not my favorite song on the album, but in the context of the album, like in the flow of the tracks, I think it works. But that
Yeah.
again, that's just my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
Because
it's filler, but it's better than the walking.
but then we
That's
get the track that most people have a problem with on this album, and that is Mother, which is
well,
Andy Summers' song. It's the only song he writes on the album. Um, and he sings it as well, if you can call it singing.
well, I think he should have just put that in the vault. I think it's the contractual. I want to get a cut of the residuals. So you notice on most of the albums, the drummer and the guitarist get a solo writing credit. So they want a cut of the lyrics. They want to have a cut of the residuals. This is a horrible song. It really is. And the lyrics are just, he's complaining about his mother and he's complaining like any girlfriend or woman or lover that he takes ends up being like his mother. It's whiny. It's just really jarring. And it's like it's like the revolution number 9 of this album. And it just sort of, it's so early in the song piece, isn't it? I don't think this album is really nicely sequenced. I don't understand why they've wedged this little suite of fantastic songs right in the middle. Maybe it was like a strategic decision that let's everyone's got to listen to the other songs that may not be as strong, and we've got to sort of just draw them in, and they've got to put up with it, and they've got to go through some songs like this. But Mother it's awful. Look, I can appreciate that there are some songs that are avant-garde, out of the box, left field, a bit post-punk, but it's kind of boring. It just doesn't go anywhere.
Well, I'm gonna absolutely disagree with you on this one too. And just for the record too, I am an absolute defender of Revolution 9 as well. I love that track, especially in the context of the whole White Album. But we're not here to talk about the White Album. Um, this I love this song. I think it's great. I love the really desperate vocal that Andy Summers does. To me, the lyric brings to me sort of memories of Norman Bates and Psycho. That's what I feel like this song is almost written from the Norman Bates perspective. You know, every girl I meet turns out to be my mother in the end, and that's kind of, if you've watched Psycho, that's kind of the plot of the movie, isn't it? He dresses up like his mother and murders these people because he thinks his mother is still with him and all that sort of thing. And musically, I don't know if you've listened to the instrumental albums that Andy Summers did with Robert Fripp. He did 2 albums with Robert Fripp, I Advanced Masked, and I can't think of the name of the other one off the top of my head. Um, they're both really, really good. But musically, I feel like there's a little bit of that I Advanced Masked kind of feel to the music. The guitar is a little bit sort of Frippian and that sort of thing.
Yeah, a little bit
Um,
scratchy.
yeah.
Yeah, look, I just think it's got a little bit of a nasty edge to it, and I understand, things can be kind of experimental, but I find it very jarring. When you're putting an album together like this, you've got to look at it like a helicopter, and you overlook the whole palette of what's in front of you. And to me, this sticks out. This is definitely the black sheep. And I don't know, maybe it's the sequencing, but where they've put it, it's sort of really jarring. Could you imagine those folks that have put this album on for the very first time, Bicycle Legs, because headphones,
Mm.
and they come to this track. It's like, it's sort of it's it's really quite out there. But to me, I think the lyrics it's a little bit nasty, and I just think musically it doesn't go anywhere. And I think it's really the contractual obligation. I want a cut of the residuals. And let's face it, this album sold 8 million copies in the US. So,
Yeah.
Andy, you've done well.
You see, I like the fact that it jars. I like the fact that you get this kind of wake up after, you've had the dreamy walking in your footsteps, and then
Falling
you've had,
asleep
oh
more
my,
like it.
and you've had, oh my God, that, is again, it's not a particularly up tempo track and all that sort of thing. And then Mother just, it's like your alarm going off.
Yeah, I
Uh,
suppose. I mean, you're
and I
falling
like that.
asleep and walking in your footsteps, so maybe you need something like that.
And then, you say the lyrics nasty, and I agree. But as I say, I think he's writing from the point of view of this Norman Bates kind of character. I think it's meant to be nasty. It's meant to have, and I think musically it gives this sort of horror film vibe too. And I really, really like that about it.
It's okay.
So then we get Synchronicity II.
We
Yep.
agree. Good
Yeah.
song.
Oh, I
Killer.
love this song. I remember
Yeah.
when this came out as a single, and this was my favorite single off the album. The
Yeah, I like the film clip. I think he must have just shot June because he's got
yeah,
the peroxide hair. It's got that very sort of post-apocalyptic type of feel. The Road Warrior, Mad Max. You got Stuart Copeland beating the drums.
yeah.
I'm gravitating to the video because the videos in a lot of these songs, I can't not think of the songs without thinking of the videos. Are you
Yeah.
the same?
Well, yeah, well, I particularly am with these ones because I don't know if this one was, but I know at least two of the other ones were directed by Godley and Cream, and I love their work, as musicians and as video makers. And but yeah, I mean, this has a real sort of Mad Max post-apocalyptic kind of look to it, and musically, I feel like it kind of has that feel to it too. And I love the lyric on this song. You know, the idea of this guy, living his everyday life while all this madness is going on around him.
Paranoia.
Yeah.
It's sort of
And
like
then
madness, paranoia. I think it's a great lyric. What do you prefer, Synchronicity 2 or 1?
um probably Synchronicity II, but there's not a
Yes.
lot in it for me.
Yep.
I think they're two of the absolute highlights of the album. And going back to your sequencing thing, I love the sequence of side one in particular. I think side one I can just listen to almost as one piece. And thinking of which, we actually skipped a track in between, didn't we? We skipped Miss Gradenko,
Yes, we did. We
which is
did.
Stuart Copeland's song, and I love this song.
Absolutely. It's another contractual, give me some money. Stuart Copeland songs are always got a wry sense of humor, a little bit of humor. His dad was a CIA agent, I believe.
Yes.
So there's a lot of skullduggery about this lady that possibly works in the Kremlin and creating all sorts of havoc. I like the lyrical wordplay. Um, Copeland's an interesting writer. It's quirky. Is it essential? Probably not. Is it top tier? Not, but it's fun.
I think it's only about 2 minutes long too. And I think it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's got a great guitar part from, I don't know whether it's Andy or Stuart playing it because Stuart was a pretty good guitarist in his own right. If anybody has never listened to them, he did an album around the time of the Police under the pseudonym Clark Kent with
Got the
two
album.
Ks.
Yes, yes.
And he plays everything on those albums. He plays the guitars, bass, drums, keyboards, everything.
And
So
his soundtrack work was magnificent. Like Rumblefish, all the soundtrack work that he did in the 80s. It was just
yeah,
wonderful. The different types of percussion, instrumentation. It's a quirky track, and you
yeah,
wouldn't expect anything less. And it's got a bit of a sense of humor. So I think we got excited. We were jumping to
yeah.
synchronicity, and we overlooked it. Let's
Oh
put the
well.
needle back and listen
Yeah,
to it.
that's all right. I love this song. And as I say, it doesn't outstay its welcome. It's only just over 2 minutes long. It's got a great little guitar part. And I love the chorus, the nobody but us in here, nobody but us. You know, it's great. I think it's wonderful. So yeah, side one, absolutely love it. That's just my thoughts on it. There's a couple of tracks there that you and I definitely don't agree on, and that's fine. I wonder how we're going to feel about the first track on side two, which is like the hit of 1983,
It's a
Every Breath You
masterpiece.
Take.
It's a masterpiece. You can't deny it. Um, I was just playing this before this show, and you never fail to be moved. But at the same time, you're horrified that you move because when you look at the lyrics, they're very dark. There is a heart of darkness in this. And I always bring this anecdote. I'm always stunned of hearing about people that play this song at weddings, funerals, sort of emotional type of
Mm,
events in people's lives. Do they ever read the lyrics? This is one song that you've got to actually listen to the lyrics.
absolutely, because this lyric is basically written from the point of view of a stalker.
Mm,
And I used to love this song. I loved it when it first came out. I still think it's an incredibly catchy song. It's so simple, it's just such a simple song.
yeah.
Um, but in this day and age, I really find it hard to look past the lyric, and the lyric is just, it's creepy. I don't like it.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
We've got to do we're taking it because that song like Mother, you found that sort of very sort of dark but witty and humorous, and I found that sort of like dark but ick. And we're
Mm,
looking at this song, and I'm just thinking of this as just a straightforward darkness song. There's no humor in it, but
no.
um, yeah, like it's a little bit manipulative. I think this is a
Mm,
manipulative song in the sense that you're swept up by the gravity, the gravatus of the musicianship, and you know how it sweeps into that chorus. That's my
mm,
favorite bit of the song where he goes into that sort of sweeping chorus. Um, and without listening to the words, you think it's a romantic song. There's a lot of romanticism, but
mm.
then after it, you think about it and you go, "Oh no, it's not really. It's about a stalker." So it's one where the power of music probably tricks your mind into thinking that it's something that it isn't. It's a
Yeah.
little bit of a mirage song, wouldn't you say? I'm
Look,
making this up as I go along. I'm
yeah,
thinking this is like a category of a song called a mirage song. It's not
yeah,
what it seems.
it is. And look, musically, I still really like this song. As I say, it's incredibly clever in its simplicity because it really is a very basic song. There's not much going on here, but the hooks are there,
Oh, it's
and they
such a
hook into
hook.
you.
It's such a hook.
And
Did
my
Puff
favorite,
Daddy kill it for you?
uh, well, he didn't kill it for me, but I'll be a happy man if I never hear the Puff Daddy version again.
Yeah, well, apparently Sting is a very happy man
Yeah,
because the
well,
residuals he gets from that. But that was an example of a song where they just cut half of the emotion, half of the meaning of the song, and it's
mm,
just music for the masses, wasn't it? It was just like
yeah,
marketing.
absolutely. Um, my favorite part of the song is that sort of middle eight, where he takes off, and the since you've gone, I've been lost
Yeah,
without a
since you,
trace.
no. Yeah,
You
that's
know
the
that
sweeping
that's
bit. Yes,
that's the bit where the song really takes off for me.
it
But
sweeps.
yeah, I can't deny the hooks on this song, but in my sort of, modern, my sort of understanding of the song now, obviously when I was 12 years old, I had no idea what the song was about. But I just thought it was a love song, as you say, but we're innocent when we're kids.
You
But
are now with the police. You go back like I do, back to Message in a Bottle, Roxanne.
yeah,
Did you think a band like this would be capable of doing such a song like this? Because I mean, it's simple, but at the same time, it's quite sophisticated.
yeah, it is. And no, I mean, I think this of the whole album, that this album is something that's kind of out there, out of their wheelhouse musically and they're going into pastures that they've not been in before. They were starting to dip their toes in it with Ghost in the Machine.
Mm,
Those first three albums, I love them to bits. There's no such thing as a bad Police album as far as I'm concerned. But they have a formula, those first three albums, don't they? It's guitar, it's bass, it's drums. The guitar is sort of washed in echo and
mm,
that sort of thing. There's a lot of sort of cod reggae going on with those early songs and that
yes.
sort of thing.
Yes.
Um, and then they start to step out of that with Ghost in the Machine, with songs like Every Little Thing She Does Is Magic,
Mm,
and Invisible Sun,
yeah,
are starting to get out of that sort of pattern that their first three albums go. And then this album to me sort of steps way out of it and
it
into
does.
sort of new pastures.
They're an unusual bunch of blokes when you think about them, because you've got Sting was a school teacher.
Yeah.
Andy Summers was much older. Like, I think he's
Mm.
pushing 80. He's like 79. So he would have been at least 10 years older. And Stuart Copeland was an American, this brash drummer. So you've got three people that couldn't be much more unlike put together. Now, for a period of time, Bicycle Legs, they were lumped in with punk.
Yeah. Well, that was the image they were going for,
Mm.
you know.
And then it went new wave, and then it sort of evolved. But really, were they ever punk?
No. No. I mean, they had edges of it. You listen to like their very first single, Fallout, and they're definitely going for that vibe. But the problem is these guys were too good a musicians to pass themselves off as punks. Stuart Copeland had played in Curved Air, who are an out and out progressive rock band. Andy Summers had played a lot in a lot of prog bands as well. He was a contemporary of Robert Fripp. That's why they ended up doing a couple of albums together. And yes, as you say, he's sort of 8, 10 years older than the other two. Sting was a jazz player, you know, so they would, as much as they wanted to image-wise pass themselves off as punks, musically, they were always more sophisticated than that.
And lyrically, writing about Nabokov, that's not actually punk, is it? So,
No,
no, they were definitely, weren't talking about the working class slums and
no,
gritting it out on the streets of Bristol. So
no.
they didn't get into that sort of character. But I just think it's quite unusual that you couldn't have three more polar opposite blokes in a band. And you can understand, as time went on, they just, on a personality level, they just couldn't stand each other.
Mm.
And even the reunion, it just didn't look comfortable. Have you seen some of the reunion footage? It
I
just didn't look
have,
comfortable.
but boy, they played those songs well.
Mm. But were they
Um,
smiling? They didn't. I
they
just.
were they were never a really smiley sort of band to begin with, I don't think. So then we get King of Pain, which was another single off the album.
Great song.
Yeah,
I
it is,
like it.
isn't
I
it?
like the lyrics. They're thought provoking. Probably one of the strongest lyrics on the album. It really is. And the black spot on the sun,
Hmm.
just talking about relationships and the pain threshold. And I think the music has just got a nice ambience with the lyrics.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, it's one of the great songs on the album. Um, Also, must mention, because I did a studio albums ranked on him recently. Weird Al did a wonderful parody of this song called King of Suede, which is about a guy who runs a tailoring business. But yeah, I love this song. And it's got a great film clip as well. Um, and it's a great vocal from Sting. He's really putting it all out there. You've got some of those very Stuart Copeland drums on this, I think, where he's playing, as you say, a little bit ahead or behind the beat. Um,
all in one song.
yeah. You get a little guitar solo from Andy Summers. Yeah, it's a great single. but the funny thing is, going back to sort of the first half of the album, this is where I feel like this album sounds really commercial, is on side two.
Yeah, but the
Um,
singles are so good. That's the thing. I know it's commercial, but the songs are just so good.
yeah,
Um, I think it's nicely sequenced, but yeah, look, it's just really weird because in the 80s, the record companies used to stack all the hits on side one,
yes,
one, two, three, four. This is unusual. And they've just done it from tracks 6 to 9 are all the singles.
yeah,
So it's encouraging the person to get the needle to go to it or to listen all the way through. And maybe some of the weaker tracks, not in your mind, Bicycle Legs,
mm,
but to the average punter, some of these tracks are weaker. So maybe it's strategic, but it's
yeah.
definitely. I mean, do you look at any themes as to why they've put this song list in a particular way? Because
I
that's
don't
another
know.
angle.
Yeah, I think that the idea was to have the more experimental tracks on side one and the more commercial tracks on side two. Um, you sometimes get that, but you often have it the other way around. As you're saying, you have an album where the commercial tracks are on side one and the more experimental stuff is on side two. Um, I've been recently listening to the wonderful Stephen Wilson remix of Gentle Giant's The Missing Piece. And, side one of that album is where they're trying to write short, concise commercial songs.
Yeah.
And being Gentle Giant, it doesn't quite work that way. But then side two is them sort of being themselves, being this more sort of extended, experimental, proggy band. Whereas, yeah, this album does the same thing, but switches the order. It has the experimental stuff on side one and the commercial stuff on side two. I don't know, maybe I think Every Breath You Take came out before the album did.
Yeah, I
And
think you're
maybe
right.
you're right that they put that as the lead track on side two so that you would listen to side one first and then get to that.
Another angle is in the vinyl age, the theory is the first track or the first two tracks has the best audiophile sound. As
Mm,
the needle goes in and further into the inner rim, that's when the sound quality diminishes. So what are you going to do on an album in the vinyl age? You're going to push your best tracks, all the ones that go pow and punch out of the speakers as side one, track one, side two, track one. And
yes.
that's synchronicity.
Yeah,
And that's
absolutely.
every breath you take. So they've got to put, you know, that
Absolutely.
might
I
be
mean,
another angle of how they
yeah,
did it.
I think so. And I think Synchronicity I is just such a good opening track.
Yes.
It really is, it's again, as we were saying when we were discussing it, that perpetual motion kind of thing that it has just draws the listener in. And yeah, it's crystal clear with those sequences and all that sort of thing.
Yep.
I think it's a great opening track. And Every Breath You Take, well, I mean, it's a smash number one hit single. Of course, that's going to be track one on either. I don't think it would have worked as the track one of the album. I
No.
don't think that would have worked at all. I don't think it's a good
No.
lead track.
No, no, it's not a good lead track. It's a follow up. It's a 1-2 punch.
Mm.
And then
So
you've got
then,
Wrapped Around Your Finger.
yeah.
That's another. I always put King of Pain and Wrapped Around Your Finger in a similar wheelhouse.
Mm.
Not similar musically or melody wise, but for some reason I group that in the same subset. Just sort of
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the one I most remember the film clip for too. All the candles.
Yes.
And that's a Godley and Cream clip, and I love it to bits.
Mm.
Um, I can't imagine how the band got out of that without getting some wax burns or something like that, because they were knocking those candles all over the place during the shooting of it. But
They're a very machistic sort of band. I think
yeah,
they went through a lot of pain barriers.
but mu lyrically, this definitely has some of Sting's pretensions coming out, sort of
Mm.
references to Scylla and Charybdis and,
Yeah.
Mephistopheles and all that sort of thing. So he's definitely getting out his literary quotes and
Yeah,
references and all that sort of thing. But it works. It absolutely works in the context of the song. You know,
yeah.
musically, I think you had to have a lyric like that. This could not have an "Oh baby, I love you" kind of lyric to it,
No,
because
no.
musically it's got that sort of, you know, these sort of airs and graces and all that sort of thing, which I really, really like.
Yeah. And that got a lot of radio airplay. Triple M in
Yeah.
Sydney, FM radio station played this. They played about the five songs: Synchronicity One, Two, Every Breath You Take, King of Pain, Wrapped Around Your Finger. They would play that on the hour.
Mm.
This album was just made for FM radio, got played to death.
Yeah.
But now on classic radio, I really think Every Breath You Take is the only one that gets played. I think and maybe since the Police came back, they've lost a lot of their luster, because it was on everyone's lips. What band would you like to be reunited? And it was the Police. They got
Mm.
back together, and then they don't kind of get talked about as much in pop culture. I know you and I talk about it in our
Yeah.
circle of friends, but is it one of those bands, Bicycle Legs, that the reunion, the mystique is gone, the
Possibly.
fervor is gone? You know?
Yeah, possibly, but I think it's also just they're not one of the bands, I think, from the sort of 70s and 80s that a lot of the younger people have latched onto, you know. Younger people have latched, you know, I get a, and I'm sure you do with your daughter, but I get with my son a real insight into which old bands the youngsters are. We sound like a couple of 80-year-olds, oh, the youngsters these days.
Yeah.
But you know, that they're sort of latching onto and bringing into the next generation and that sort of thing.
Mm.
And the Police is just not one of the ones I hear about, you
No,
know.
no, not at all. But I think the tour may have killed the mystique and the legacy. That's a good reason
Yeah.
why a lot of bands have never reunited and done that tour, like Led Zeppelin. What keeps the mystique alive with Led Zeppelin? I
Mm.
mean, they did that one concert, but
Yeah.
they haven't really sort of satisfied that demand that let's do that final tour and that final album, because if
Yeah.
it's no good and it doesn't work out, it kills the legacy. And I don't know. I think Police had a lot stronger legacy prior to that reunion, and after the reunion, I don't know. People just sort of, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, you could be right. But I mean, I've seen the DVD and I thought the reunion was great. I thought they played the songs really, really well. As you say, there's definitely distance between the three of them. They're not friends, and I don't think they ever were. But the three musicians on stage, man, could they still play and sing those
Mm,
songs.
yeah, well,
Um,
I think that's a good sort of topic for another day.
yeah,
Tension equals creativity.
yeah,
A band where there's personal dislike, but they put their musical differences aside. I mean, there's been so many bands like Deep Purple, Pink Floyd, yeah, where that creative, that personal animosity converts into some sort of creativity.
yeah.
But
So then we
yeah,
finished the album with "Tea in the Sahara."
it's
So you,
atmospheric. It's a
yeah,
little bit. It's not a strong song. I would say this would be classified as a filler track. Um, but it's definitely got a little bit more atmosphere. But to think this is their, not counting number 11, the 11 bonus track, which is Murder by Numbers, which was on the cassette and CD edition. But
yeah.
just to think that the album finished on that note, it's a little bit of an anti-climax, don't you think?
Well, look, if there was any song on this album that I think you could say was pointing towards Sting's solo career, it's this one.
Yeah.
Um, you know, Murder by Numbers, as you say, we should give that a quick mention. I think that song is throwaway.
You,
Um, uh, but you know, so I've always listened to the vinyl, you know, so I don't get Murder by Numbers when I listen to the vinyl. But I don't know, Tea in the Sahara, again, like Walking in Your Footsteps, it's a different atmosphere it creates, but it's a nice atmosphere. I like it. And as I say, I do like Dream of the Blue Turtles. I don't tend to like the further Sting went into his solo career, the more sort of beige and bland I thought he got. Um,
yeah.
And I don't know, this is an enigmatic way for the band to go out because I mean, this was never meant to be their final album, you know. They meant in 1986 to record a whole new album, but then Stuart Copeland broke like an ankle or a wrist or something like that and couldn't play. And so they ended up just recording that rather god-awful Don't Stand So Close to Me 86 for the best of
Yeah,
album. And then they just never did anything after that. But
yeah,
this was never meant to be the end of the story. You know, this was meant to be a chapter in a continuing story. It's just because of circumstances and because of the fact that Sting's first solo album did so well, which I don't think he was expecting. Um, the band ended up breaking up. But it's an enigmatic way to go out. But again, as I say, it was never meant to be the last statement that we would have from this band. It just turned
yeah,
out that way.
absolutely. And it's just a little bit anticlimactic, that last song, and the way that they did go out. Don't Stand So Close to Me. I don't mind it. I don't hate it as much as you do. It's a different
Mm.
take. I do prefer the original hunky, little bit more direct, a bit more sharp. But you know, that version that they did for the greatest hits was very much like 1986. It had the sort of slowed down.
Mm.
The melodies were sort of dragging a little bit of a synth line to it. I think it was an interesting interpretation, but I don't.
You know what I don't like about it is the fact that it's all drum machines because the fact that Stuart couldn't play drums.
Mm,
Um, I don't know. It seemed pointless to me at the time, and it kind of still seems pointless to me today. I don't despise it, but it's,
mm,
you know, considering that is the actual final thing we ever got on vinyl from this band, it's a bit of a damp squib, you have to admit.
yeah, it is. It is. And but anyway,
Yeah.
there you go. But they had the reunion and
Yeah.
over and out.
Yeah. I mean, that was it. This was the last album. So there you have it, everyone. That's our thoughts on this album. As you can see, we differ quite a lot on some of these tracks. We agree on some of them as well. It's interesting to talk about these, and I have mentioned this to Peter, but I will mention it now. I'm still up if you are for doing a sequel to this episode on the Stones' Satanic Majesty's request. So if you're up for that
Yeah,
at
I'm
some
up for that.
stage,
We'll do that.
yeah, because I
Side
think
two.
that'd be interesting to discuss our differences on that album too. But
I think you could have a little bit of a theme here, you know.
yeah,
Don't you have a theme called defending
yes, in
the, yeah,
defense of, yeah.
in defense of. There you go. Yeah, I like
So
it.
there you are.
Oh, done. We'll do that.
So thank you so much, Peter, for doing this. And as always, it's always a pleasure to have you on the channel. If anybody is not already subscribed to Peter's channel, Rock Daydream Nation, you are doing yourselves a great disservice by not being subscribed. Please go there and subscribe right now. There will be a link in the description, so please do that. Please do like,
Absolutely.
share, and subscribe here. It really helps the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please go and have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to see some of my In Defense Of shows, as Peter was mentioning, I have a playlist for those. Or if you want to see some of my studio albums ranked, including my studio albums ranked of The Police, I have a playlist for those. And if you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, like the aforementioned Rock Daydream Nation, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram and Twitter and a bunch of other socials as well. I also have a dedicated Bicyclelegs Facebook page. Links are all in the description. Please come and give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
See you later.